There is something beneath the ice that should not be alive. Something that has not moved in 40,000 years. Something that stopped breathing before the pyramids existed, before written language, before humans even learned to farm the land beneath their feet. And then one day, in a small laboratory, inside a tiny petri dish, it moved. This is not a story about science fiction. This is not a theory or a guess. This happened. It was documented, filmed, and published in one of the most respected scientific journals in the world. And when the scientists who witnessed it tried to explain what they were seeing, they struggled to find the words. Because the words we have were never built for a moment like this. The place where this story begins is Siberia. If you have never been to Siberia, it is difficult to describe just how vast and empty it truly is. Stretching across more than 13 million square kilometers, it covers almost 10% of all the land on Earth. In winter, temperatures drop so low that exposed skin freezes in minutes. Rivers turn to stone. The silence is so complete, it feels like the world has stopped breathing. And beneath the surface of this frozen land lies something called permafrost. Permafrost is ground that has remained frozen continuously for at least 2 years. But in Siberia, much of the permafrost has been frozen not for 2 years, but for thousands of years. Some of it has not thawed since the last ice age. It sits there beneath your feet like a time capsule, preserving everything that ever fell into it with extraordinary precision. Insects, seeds, pollen, fungi, ancient soil, and life. For decades, scientists have been drilling into this frozen ground and pulling out core samples, long cylinders of ancient earth, layered like the pages of a history book. Each layer represents a different era. Go deep enough, and you are holding ground that formed when woolly mammoths still walked the earth. In 2021, a team of Russian scientists from the Institute of Physico-Chemical and Biological Problems in Soil Science made a discovery that would echo through the scientific world for years to come. They extracted samples from permafrost located in the Alazaya River region of northeastern Siberia. The samples were pulled from a depth of 3.5 meters. At that depth, the ground had been continuously frozen for an estimated 24,000 years. The scientists were careful. They were meticulous. They had done this kind of work before, and they knew how easily a sample could be contaminated. But what they found inside those frozen samples was unlike anything they had expected. Rotifers. If you have never heard of rotifers, you are not alone. They are microscopic. You would need a powerful microscope just to see one. They live in water, in soil, in moss, in almost any environment on Earth where moisture exists. They have been around for millions of years. Scientists have long known that rotifers are remarkably tough organisms, capable of surviving extreme conditions that would kill almost any other creature. But nobody believed they could survive for 24,000 years. When the scientists carefully thawed the ancient samples in a controlled laboratory environment, they watched through their microscopes and waited. And then something impossible happened. The rotifers moved. Not a twitch, not a spasm. They moved with purpose. They began to feed. They began to reproduce. They behaved exactly like modern rotifers, as if nothing unusual had happened, as if they had simply woken up from a very long sleep. 24,000 years underground. 24,000 years frozen in darkness. And they came back as if time meant nothing at all. To understand how this is possible, you need to understand a process called cryptobiosis. The word comes from Greek, meaning hidden life. It describes a state in which an organism essentially pauses all biological activity in response to extreme environmental conditions. No metabolism, no respiration, no cellular activity of any measurable kind. In cryptobiosis, the organism is not technically alive by any standard definition, but it is not dead either. It exists in a third state that biology is still struggling to fully explain. A state somewhere between life and death, suspended in time, waiting. When rotifers enter cryptobiosis in response to freezing temperatures, their bodies go through a remarkable transformation. The water inside their cells, which would normally form ice crystals that tear through cell membranes and cause fatal damage, is replaced by special protective molecules. These molecules act as a kind of biological antifreeze. They surround and protect the delicate structures inside each cell, holding everything in perfect preservation while the temperature drops far below zero. The result is an organism locked in time, perfectly preserved, waiting for the world to warm up again. And for 24,000 years, the world did not warm up. Not enough. The permafrost held, the ice remained. The rotifers waited in complete darkness, frozen at the bottom of the world, while above them the entire history of human civilization unfolded. The ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. The Roman Empire rose and collapsed. The Renaissance happened. The Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, the invention of the Internet, the entire recorded history of humanity, every war, every discovery, every empire, every invention, all of it happened while those rotifers lay frozen and waiting beneath the Siberian soil. And then a team of scientists with a drill and a petri dish woke them up. But rotifers are not the only ancient organisms to have been successfully revived from permafrost, not by a long way. Years before the rotifer discovery, scientists had already successfully revived ancient nematodes, tiny worms, from Siberian permafrost, estimated to be between 32,000 and 42,000 years old. Like the rotifers, these ancient worms began to move and feed after being carefully thawed in a laboratory setting. They too had survived, using cryptobiosis. They too had waited out the ages in frozen silence. And then there are the plants. In 2012, Russian scientists successfully grew a flowering plant called Silene stenophylla from seeds and fruit tissue found in ancient squirrel burrows buried in Siberian permafrost. The plant material was approximately 32,000 years old, and it grew. It produced flowers. It produced seeds of its own. A 32,000-year-old plant blooming in a modern greenhouse as if it had been planted yesterday. Each of these discoveries on its own would be remarkable enough to rewrite textbooks. Together they point to something much larger, something that forces us to completely rethink what we believe about the limits of life. But there is a darker side to this story, because not everything preserved in permafrost is harmless. In 2014, French scientists announced that they had successfully revived a virus from Siberian permafrost. The virus had been frozen for approximately 30,000 years. When thawed in a laboratory, it became active again. It became infectious. The scientists named it Pithovirus sibericum and noted that it was the largest virus ever discovered, larger by far than any known modern virus. In this case, the virus only infected amoeba. It posed no danger to humans. The scientists were careful, and no harm was done. But the implications were enormous and deeply unsettling. If a 30,000-year-old virus can survive in permafrost and reactivate when thawed, then other ancient pathogens could do the same. Bacteria, fungi, viruses that infected animals and humans who lived during the Ice Age. Organisms that our modern immune systems have never encountered and have no defenses against. This is not a theoretical concern. In 2016, a 12-year-old boy in a remote region of Siberia died from anthrax. Dozens of other people were infected. Thousands of reindeer were killed. Investigators traced the outbreak to a reindeer carcass that had been buried in permafrost and exposed when the ground thawed during an unusually warm summer. The anthrax bacteria had been preserved in the frozen ground for approximately 75 years. When the permafrost melted, the bacteria came back. 75 years is nothing compared to the timescales we have been discussing. And now, as global temperatures continue to rise at a rate faster than at any point in recorded history, permafrost that has been frozen since the Ice Age is beginning to thaw. In Siberia, enormous craters are opening in the ground as frozen methane escapes from melting permafrost. Ancient ground that has been stable for thousands of years is becoming soft and unstable. Rivers are changing course, entire landscapes are transforming. And with every layer of permafrost that melts, more ancient material is exposed. More seeds, more organisms, more viruses, more things that have been frozen and waiting for a world warm enough to wake them up. We are, whether we realize it or not, in the process of thawing out the Ice Age. Scientists are racing to understand what lies preserved in the permafrost before it disappears. Not just because of the danger, but because of the extraordinary scientific knowledge buried down there. Ancient DNA, ancient ecosystems, a biological record of life on Earth stretching back further than we can fully imagine. But there is one more dimension to this story that goes beyond our own planet entirely. If life can survive being frozen for 24,000 years on Earth, if microscopic organisms can pause all biological activity and wait out the ages in frozen darkness, then what does that mean for the rest of the universe? Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, has a vast liquid ocean beneath a thick shell of ice. Scientists believe it is one of the most promising places in the solar system to search for extraterrestrial life. If organisms similar to rotifers exist in that ocean, and if any of them have ever been frozen into the ice shell above, they could potentially survive there for millions of years. Mars has polar ice caps, and Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, has geysers of water ice shooting into space. Pluto is covered in frozen nitrogen. The universe is full of ice. And now we know that ice does not necessarily mean lifeless. The rotifers of Siberia have shown us something profound. Life is not fragile. Life is not delicate. Life is stubborn and patient and relentless in ways we are only beginning to understand. It finds a way to hold on, even when holding on means stopping completely, shutting everything down, and waiting in frozen darkness for tens of thousands of years. It waits for its moment. And when that moment comes, it wakes up. So here is the question that should keep you up at night. As the Earth continues to warm, as the permafrost continues to melt, as more and more ancient material is exposed to the modern world, what exactly are we waking up? What is still frozen beneath the ice right now, perfectly preserved, patiently waiting? What organisms from a world we never knew are about to re-enter a world they would not recognize? We do not fully know the answer yet, and that might be the most unsettling thing of all. If this kind of story makes you see the natural world differently, if it makes you realize just how much we still do not understand about the planet we live on, then this channel is exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to Naturis right now and never miss a documentary. Every week, we go deeper into the mysteries that science is only beginning to uncover. The world is stranger and more astonishing than you think, and we are just getting started.